Hello, I'm Janice Maddock with Chicago Integrative Movement Specialist and the Integrative Movement Institute. I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening, taking some time out of your Wednesday evening to join me for this webinar where today we're going to talk about the effects of that thing called tech or text neck, as well as what drives us to do that. We're going to talk about our eyes and our head and that chronic neck tightness that so many of us struggle with, what causes it, and what can you start to do about it to make those changes. So pretty much all of us have something like this, a smartphone of some kind. Maybe you could just still have just a regular old cell phone. Remember when we had just regular old cell phones, but the only thing it did is came up to our ear, and now we spend all this time looking at these tiny screens. And as most people tell me, everything that they do, their entire life, so much of their life, is on this small device. Something so good that can cause so many problems for so many people. Do you know that the average age, I think in 2020, of people getting their cell phones was like 10 and a half years old? So think of being 10 and a half, what were you doing when you were 10 and a half? And imagine spending so many hours looking at a small device. So many hours looking at a small device. I was in the airport recently, and there was a young woman in front of me in line. And at one point I looked up from my own cell phone and I couldn't see her head. I could not see her head. So I stepped to the side because it was freaking me out a little bit. And I stepped to the side, and what I noticed was her head was so far down that it was below the level of her shoulders while she was looking and doing stuff on her cell phone. I know I'm guilty. I hope I'm not guilty of doing it that badly, because I really do try hard to keep it up here. However, I think if you look around, you can see a lot of people do that, and they do that all day long. It's a problem for one. We'll start with one really important reason why it's a problem. They did a study years ago on young, healthy males. And what they noticed was a 20% decrease in the efficiency in which they were breathing by having a forward head posture. This is a forward head posture. It changed their quality and how they are breathing by 20% with just a limited amount of time in that position. So do this with me if you want to test this theory. Just go ahead, get yourself in a nice posture, good relax, but good posture, and just take a few breaths in. Get a sense of what it feels like just to inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose. Good. Now take your phone like you would. Find yourself sitting there, waiting for the train, waiting for a plane, sitting on the plane, sitting at your desk, sitting on the couch, and just put your head down and take a breath in. Probably feels a little bit different. The quality and the effort you used to take that breath in probably felt a little bit different. So that's one thing. It changes how we breathe. Changes our posture, and it changes how we breathe. I read another article recently today that talked about the young children, young adults are actually reverting back to what my generation definitely didn't want to do, which was have that gentle humpback that we used to see in our grandparents, because they spend so much time in this position. So we're starting to change our postures based on a simple device that many of us have to be in front of or spend time in front of all day long. What can we do about that to make sure that we don't change our posture, we don't change the way in which we breathe, and we don't struggle with chronic neck and shoulder pain and or headaches? What can we start to do about it? There's a few things. One, you're doing it right now. You're educating yourself of what happens when I do that. So now it gives you a different value of when I assume this posture, what else is happening to me? One, you're changing how you're breathing. You're also starting to change when we look at these small screens. So right now I'm looking at you or through my screen, which is about 15 inches. Not the smallest screens available, but also not one of the larger screens. And I can see my entire screen without having to move my eyes very much. We look at this screen, I don't have to move my eyes at all. I just kind of look at it and I can see everything. So I'm not moving my eyes. If you got our email last week or earlier, I think I sent it out on Sunday, or your IMS person may have sent it out to you. It talked about how we have 6 eye muscles. 1 to move our eyes up, 1 to move our eyes down, and 4 to move our eyes side to side and up and down at certain angles. Have you ever sat in a position for a long period of time and you get up and you feel kind of stiff because you haven't really moved your muscles around a little bit? Well, now imagine those eye muscles. You're looking at these tiny screens and they never get moved. So if your eyes can't move because the muscles haven't maintained their mobility because they're stuck at these small screens, you will then turn your head and neck. If you can't look visually with just your eyes, you'll start to turn your head and neck for simple ranges of movement. Say somebody says, hey mom, and they're just standing at a 30-degree angle from you. Well, technically you should be able to move your eyes 30 degrees to look over at Bobby asking you a question, but oftentimes we go, what? Because we don't even have that ability to let our eyes go that direction. So let's do a little test here. Go ahead and get yourself again in a comfortable posture, and let's see what it feels like in your eyes when you start to move them. So go ahead and just keep your eyes still. And actually, if you can see yourself someplace as you're doing this, get a sense of what happens to your head and neck as you turn your eyes or move your eyes to the right as far as you can go. And then come back to the center. Do the same thing to the left. Turn your eyes as far as you can go. Look as far as you can go without moving your head. Look up and look down. You might feel a little bit of activation in your neck when you do that. I'm going to have you close your eyes. Actually, before we even have you close your eyes, let's test how your head and neck are moving right now. So again, if you're sitting or standing, either is fine. Just put your arms relaxed. Let's have you turn your head to look over your right shoulder. Come back to the center and to the left. Come back to the center. Bring your chin down to your chest and come back up. And do this one carefully. If you have any problems with circulation or dizziness, don't do this one. We're just going to put our head back. Good. And come back. Now, this next exercise I'm going to have you do is going to involve your eyes. So if you do struggle with dizziness, you might not want to do this one, or don't do it to any sort of extreme. So in that seated position, actually go ahead and sit down if you are standing. Go ahead and sit down comfortably and close your eyes. We're going to do a few breaths, but we're going to move our eyes as we exhale. So it's going to go like this. You're going to gently draw in your breath through your nose. You're going to start your exhale and you're going to turn your eyes to the right as far as you can go. Eyes are closed. As you inhale, bring those eyes back to center. Go ahead and gently exhale and turn your eyes to the left as far as they can go. Your eyes are closed. As you inhale, come back. As you exhale next, you're going to let your eyes roll down as far as they can go, as though they're looking at your toes. Inhale, come back to center. Exhale, let the eyes float back towards the top of your head. Inhale, back to center. We're going to do 2 more. Exhale, let your eyes go to the right again. Inhale, come back to center. Exhale, let your eyes go to the left. Come back to center. Go ahead and let's test the range of motion of our neck again. So go ahead and turn your head to the right. Come back to center and to the left. Come back to center. Bring your chin down towards your chest. Come back up and slightly bring your chin back and back to center. Did you notice it was any easier to move after you took some breaths and just gently let your eyes move with the eyes closed, but let your eyeballs just move as you exhale? Did anybody notice any slight change in how their neck was moving when they did that? You can throw in the chat box if you want. Yep, Samar said I did. Yes, I did. Yeah, so Sarah's like, yes, so much better. So These simple things tell us that our eyes need to be moving more than they normally do, especially if you are someone who is prone to being in front of or having to be in front of a screen. Lori says, yes, she felt a difference as well. So that's a simple exercise you can do. I do tell you to pause. Julianne said yes. To just, if you do struggle with dizziness, this for some people is really hard. How many of you felt as though it was hard to do that? Like you felt like your eyes, it was hard for your eyes to move in that direction? Because sometimes that will happen too. It'll be hard. It will feel hard for those eyes to move as we're doing this, right? Because they're not used to it. Maybe Sarah said it was harder to move to the left. Yep. And that's what you might find. For me, I believe it's harder to move to the right. I have an astigmatism in my right side. Somebody said, I find it hard looking down was most difficult. Yes. And some of that could be related to your posture. Harder to move closed than open. Interesting. Thank you, Andrea. So this is really important because some of you notice like, hey, just by letting my eyes move a little bit more, it actually changed how my head and neck was moving. So let's also consider another thing that happens to our posture when we're sitting in front of a screen. So I bring my head down, get my hair out of the way a little bit here, but then I might bring my head down, but then I also lift my chin up. So I get this really attractive posture of my head down, but my chin up. So I start to shorten the neck muscles and I start to shorten those little tiny muscles called our suboccipitals that sit right here. If you ever feel like, oh God, it just feels really tight, and sometimes you poke up in there and it feels really tender, those are your suboccipital muscles. They actually attach from your first vertebrae up into your skull. So you're called your suboccipitals. And they do tiny little motions like nod your head. Not nod your head like this, but nod your head like this. Okay, so if you ever feel that tightness in there, start to consider, what does your head and neck posture look like? When you're sitting, do you tend to sit like this and then lift your head up? Lots of times I have clients who are gamers and that's kind of what their posture looks like. So let's go ahead and I'm going to give you another cue with your breathing. So think of this area back here. So if you want to find that area, it's right below that bump of knowledge, that little bump in the back of your head. You can slide your fingers down to the base of your skull here. And this is about where you'll find them, where your neck and your skull meet. There's 6 little muscles called your suboccipitals that sit right up in there. And a cue that I really love for this one is as you exhale, I just want you to picture like it's just doing this. It's opening up like this, like a fan. It's just opening up like this as a fan. Okay, so we're going to use that cue for 3 breaths as we exhale. So close your eyes again, get comfortable. Make sure that your breathing is nice and light and gentle in and out through your nose. So you're going to take a nice gentle breath in. And as you exhale, just picture this fan opening at the base of your skull. Again, a nice gentle breath in. And as you exhale, just picture this nice fan just gently opening at the base of your skull. And one more tiny breath here. And again, as you exhale, just have this little visual of a gentle fan just opening at the base of your skull. Good. Imagery is really important when we're trying to work these muscles because they're so tiny that if we actually try to do a movement, sometimes it's too much. It's too much, other muscles come into play. So do me a favor, go ahead and check that rotation again. Turn to the right, come back to center, and to the left, come back to center. Bring your chin down to your chest and back up, and slightly bring your head back and back to center. Did anybody notice any change with that? I know that visual may not be perfect for everybody, but again, it's just that idea of bringing your awareness into this space and letting those muscles relax, okay? Yes, Beth said, yes, freer, increased range of motion, a bit, smoother, Halima said. Oh, nice range of motion. I like that one, Julianne. Awesome. So these are just Again, simple things you can do to help increase the range of motion and the quality of the motion that you have in your head and neck. This is important for a few reasons. One, a basic safety reason, you need to be able to turn your head comfortably when we're doing a few things. One, when we're driving and we're looking in that blind spot. Is there anybody in my blind spot? How many of you have to do this to look in your blind spot instead of just turning your head over your shoulder into your blind spot? I remember for years, I could not look at my blind spot without doing this because my neck was so chronically stuck and tight. So being able to do that, safety, one thing. Also your balance. If you can't turn your head, or we call dissociate your head from the rest of your body, it's going to change your balance. If I can't do that, and every single time I need to see if somebody's coming behind me and I'm turning my whole body, it's going to be really hard to keep my balance. Okay, you should be able to walk and turn your head and not lose your balance. So balance, being able to just look over your shoulder. So safety is a good reason, and balance as well. So another thing clients will often say is, hey, I really think sitting at my computer really changes my posture. It gives me these rounded shoulders, okay? I have I'm forward shouldered. My shoulders are always coming forward. Dr. Osar does this great imitation of what this looks like if our shoulders don't come forward. Right now, I'm working at my computer screen. And what is a common cue we're told we should do when our shoulders are coming forward? We're often told, pull the shoulders back or pull the shoulders down and back. And so if I'm doing that and I'm like, ooh, my posture is not good, my shoulders are forward, I need to pull my shoulders down and back. Well, all of a sudden it becomes much harder to reach my screen, right? So I'm going to bring my shoulders forward again so I can reach my screen. But my posture cue is to bring my shoulders down and back. Well, it's really hard to reach my screen, so I'm going to bring my shoulders forward again. It's really important to know that your shoulders have to come forward, right? They need to come forward to do work in front of you. It's not that your shoulders are forward that is the problem. The problem is, how do we bring the shoulders forward? So we have that bone in the back that sits on our rib cage here. That's part of our shoulder complex, that shoulder blade. When we bring our arms or our shoulders forward to do work in front of us, that bone should wrap around the rib cage to come forward, to allow our arms to come forward. What we get in trouble with that starts to create more tightness in our neck and in our shoulders is we bring the shoulder forward this way instead of this way, okay? Especially if I'm prone to like, ooh, I need to squeeze my shoulders down and back, I start to already create tightness in the muscles that help bring my shoulders around versus up and over. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind if somebody's like, oh, you have forward shoulders. Ask them, well, how do you know I have forward shoulders? Because I do need to do work in front of me. Maybe it's how I'm bringing my shoulders forward. That might be the problem if you have chronic head and neck and shoulder tightness. You should be able to stand here with your phone and do work. The problem is if you start to do work like this, bringing the shoulders forward, look what happens. I just kind of saw the corner of my eye. Look what happens when I bring my shoulders forward. I instantly start to do this with my head and neck as well, right? I bring my shoulders forward and I instantly start to bring my head and neck forward into the same type posture again. So what do we do then to help us not get these rounded, rolled forward shoulders? How do we make sure that that doesn't happen? We start to change our cues, right? Oftentimes we're told to stand up straight, lift your chest, pull your shoulders down and back. That helps you stand up straight. Let's start with our head and neck in that getting good posture to stand. Our spine isn't straight, so we're not really standing straight. We really don't want to be standing straight. So this is actually a really nice gentle cue as well. It's a little bit of self-traction. And with this one, less is more. Okay, so you're gonna place one hand on your chest. You're gonna place one hand again just below that bump of knowledge, that little EOP there. Just place your hand right underneath there. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna do a gentle traction exercise with our breath, okay? So we're just gonna take in a nice gentle inhale. As we exhale, We're just going to imagine we're separating our hands like this at this angle, like they're just moving gently away from each other. If you notice, I said imagine. Just imagine that you are doing that, okay? So one hand on your chest, one hand just below that bump. Let your arms relax. And you're just gonna take in a nice gentle breath. As you exhale, just imagine that you're gently pulling your hands away from each other. One more gentle inhale. And as you exhale, just imagine that you're pulling those hands away. Final breath, a gentle inhale and exhale. And again, just imagine you're pulling your hands in opposite directions at an angle. Good. If you want to, go ahead and check in on your neck range of motion again after that little exercise and just see if it feels any different. Does it feel any smoother or easier after just doing that nice little self-traction, minimal pressure self-traction? Did anybody notice any difference with that? That's a nice, easy thing you can do. Julianne's like, even more. That's a nice, easy thing you can do when you're sitting at your desk. Andrea's less crunchy. Everybody likes to be less crunchy. Alima says yes. Lori says smoother as well. Awesome. Okay, so if you're at your desk, another way that you can start to change your posture, and we all know this, but it's always worth a reminder. It's so easy to get sucked into whatever project you're working on. Stand up, set that timer. Siri does that for you. If you got that Apple phone, Siri, set a reminder. I need to stand up. I know your Apple Watches will shake, tell you to stand up, okay? Or your Fitbits will do those things like, hey, it's time to get up. So get up, stand up from your desk. Even if you're like, I don't really have a lot of time to do that, Janice, it's okay. Stand up, do this gentle exercise. Take a few breaths in. Allow yourself to relax and just reset, okay? And then sit back down. Sit back down in a nice supported posture and then go back to work, and it's okay. All right, so you might actually find you'll feel a little bit more productive when you're actually sitting in a better posture. I talked a little bit, okay, if anybody was on my first webinar we did a couple months ago, I did my very, very juvenile drawing because this is one aspect of my life that I never really got better at or progressed. So it's like my six-year-old drawing here. So if you remember, okay, so this is the back side of a person. You can tell this is not my thing, but these dots here are the spine. The stripes are the ribs. So lots of times people will say, I have one shoulder that sits up higher than the other, right? Lots of people say, hey, I got this one shoulder that sits up higher than the other. Oftentimes when we start to assess people, what we actually notice is, sure, the shoulder looks higher, but it's in the right position. It's actually the other shoulder is sitting lower. The other shoulder is actually sitting lower. And what's the problem with that? The problem with that is if my shoulder, I have one shoulder that sits lower, as I go to bring my arm up overhead, it's not going to go up as easily because I have all this stuff pulling it down. Stuff meaning muscles. Muscles are pulling that shoulder down excessively. And what that looks like, if you want to look at yourself in the mirror, is when you have a shoulder that's lower, not optimally sitting, it's actually going to have this long slope. It's going to have a long slope. And then what you can see here is that shoulder blade is going to then sit lower as well. Okay, so you might look in the mirror and be like, oh yeah, I do have a shoulder that's higher, but if I look again, I actually have a shoulder that has this long slope. Why is that long slope a big deal? Well, because you have muscles that attach from your spine into this part of your shoulder blade right here, like this. And then you also have muscles that attach from here out to the edge of your shoulder. And when you start to get this long slope, you're actually taking those muscles and you're stretching them out like a rubber band. When you start to pull that shoulder away from its other section that it's attached to, so it could be here, it could be here. When you start to pull the ends away from each other, they start to stretch out like a rubber band. And so that's going to give your brain a sense of feeling tight. Imagine if you just stretched out, I was looking for a rubber band. I don't have one super handy. No, but you're just going to stretch out that rubber band, and that's what's going to happen as you're starting to pull that shoulder away from your ears. That's why we're not super big on stretching the neck muscles. We're not super big on that because oftentimes our brain perceives we need to stretch something that feels tight. And the reality is that muscle's already stretched out. Okay, that muscle's already stretched out. Just picture it like if you ever put a shirt on a hanger where the hanger was too short and then the sleeve of the shoulder just kind of fell off, that's what it looks like. Our shoulders should be open and wide. They should be wide and open. Your collarbones, if you want to find your collarbones, they start here right at the center, and then you can walk them out, you can follow that bone all the way out to the edge of your shoulders, okay? That bone, when it's sitting in a good place, should go up at an angle as it goes out towards your shoulders. It shouldn't go straight across, and it shouldn't go down. If it goes straight across or it goes down, there's a chance that that shoulder is sitting too low. It should actually go up. That's important because your collarbone, when you raise your arm up overhead, actually turns in response to your arm going overhead. It actually helps your arm go overhead when it turns. So if you're ever thinking that you have, lots of us think of like, ooh, got that knot right here, right? Who doesn't have that knot right there? I got this knot right here. Ooh, it's really tender when I push in on that. Well, that's because that muscle, often because that muscle is pulled tight and that's the end of it, and it wants to come back up where it needs to be. It's wanting to come back up. So what do we do about this? What do we do about these shoulders that could be pulling on our neck, pulling away from our neck? So one thing I want you to do, if you're comfortable and you have the range of motion, you're going to take your thumbs and you're going to put them underneath your shoulders. And then think about just letting your shoulders sit on your thumbs if you can do this, okay? Again, sit in a nice, comfortable position. And you're just gonna very gently kind of just rub your thumbs along your rib cage here. Make it a little tender. It's okay. All right, and then just relax your elbows. I want you to, again, think we're gonna do a breathing exercise. You're gonna just gently breathe into that space where you feel your thumbs. Okay, you should take a nice gentle breath in and think of sending that breath out towards your thumbs. And then you're gonna exhale nice and gently. Gently breathing towards those thumbs. And a nice full gentle exhale, just let that breath come out. Again, nice gentle breath in. And then exhale. Just let that breath gently and slowly come all the way out. Good, just let your arms gently come back down to your side. Check the range of motion of your neck again. Right, left, down, and back. As you checked it again, how is it feeling? Did you notice any change with that gentle exercise? Julianne, I'm turning into an owl. Lori, wow, wow. Okay, awesome. You guys are noticing some pretty significant changes. That's awesome. Much better on my slope side. That's awesome. Yes, so you can see your shoulders are going to have an effect on your head and neck. So we can kind of now see why that cue of holding my shoulders down and back maybe not be such a great cue when we're thinking about what the muscles actually do and where they are in their attachments from our shoulders into our head and neck. So if I go now to work out, how do I need to change my cue for myself? Well, one, we just kind of talked about it. I want to make sure that I maintain this nice length between my rib cage and my head, so I can do my nice gentle traction with my breath. I can gently put my fingers in here and just think about a nice gentle inhale here. And then this is my starting position, not this. This now is my starting position for my exercises. Okay, when I pull, I just pull down. I don't need to pull into my shoulders. My shoulders will do what they need to do when they're in good alignment. Okay, so there's a few things that can really come into play when we are thinking about that chronic neck, but that chronic neck tightness that many of us struggle with, because it often can lead to more pain, and it can lead to things like headaches. And it can just be really uncomfortable and very disturbing to your everyday life. So there's a few things I hope that you can take away from this brief webinar, and that is your habits and the way that you do things will start to drive how your neck is feeling. If it's feeling good or if it's feeling bad. The strategies and the habits that you're using in everyday life can change that. I want to focus on one other thing that we've been touching on throughout this entire time at this point, and that's how you breathe. If you noticed, all of my cues were to breathe gently and lightly, breathe in and out through your nose. When we breathe, we have two primary muscles of respiration, and that's important because when we don't breathe well, we start to use what we call accessory muscles, extra muscles that help lift our rib cage so our breath can go in and out. Those will come into play every now and again. If you're doing a heavy cardio, if you're working out really hard, if you're running away from somebody, if you're scared, there are times when you'll use those muscles because it does just help you get the breath in and out. However, many of us will breathe using these accessory muscles, which are in our neck and one of our pec muscles as well. Our pec muscles, we have a couple muscles in the back, those big back muscles that run here. Those are accessory muscles of breathing, but specifically our neck, we have many muscles that attach from our neck into our rib cage that will help lift our rib cage. But at the same time, if we're using them all the time, then they start to pull us more into that forward head, because the more we use them, the tighter they get, the shorter they get, the more they start to pull on our head and neck. That's why teaching yourself or letting somebody help you teach you how to breathe is really, really important. I think the average person breathes about 20,000 times a day. 20,000 times a day. If you can learn how to breathe well and breathe optimally, it can be life-changing to how your neck and shoulders feel. Neck, shoulders, upper back, your ribs, if you notice they're a little bit tender when you're putting your thumbs in there. That's why breathing is so important. That's why the way you breathe is so important. That's why when you breathe well, you start to feel these really significant changes. Part of the other things that we were doing along with our breathing was we were putting you in good alignment. We're helping you get your head and neck in good alignment. We're helping bring your shoulders into good alignment. Using your eyes, we're starting to change your head alignment as well by helping release some of those tight, I really want to say tech really bad, your tight neck muscles, okay, by starting to use more of those eye muscles to do other things. So when you are thinking about your posture, start to think about your alignment. When you're on your phone, be aware. Really, it's the biggest thing, is just be aware. Where's my head when I'm looking at my phone? Am I looking here at eye level, or am I looking down here? Am I looking here, or am I down here? I'll give you an example. When we were kids, my mom was very big on etiquette at the table. And so if this is my plate, okay, my eraser, but this is my plate and this is my utensil. Lots of times we would do this. Now there's cultures where they do that. Not my house. My mom would always say, don't bring your food, don't bring your face to your food, bring your food to your face. So the same thing with your phone, bring your phone to your face, to your eyes. Don't bring your face to your phone, okay? So be aware, awareness is number one. What am I doing with my body? Am I pulling my shoulders down and back? Am I breathing right? Am I breathing easily? Am I breathing at all? And that's the last point I'll finish with. There's actually a thing, a loose term called email apnea. Email apnea, like sleep apnea, meaning that we get so engaged with what we're doing that we stop breathing. I've had so many clients tell me that they stop breathing when they're working, that all of a sudden they're like, they're having to take this big breath in because they've literally stopped breathing. If you stop breathing, you get really exhausted really fast. So don't do that. So how you breathe will affect your posture. Vice versa, your posture will affect how you breathe. Stay or reset your alignment as often as you can so that you are maintaining this nice, easy way to hold your head. You all felt when I put my head in that position, wow, it was so much easier to move it. So use those gentle cues, set your posture, use your breathing, and be aware. These are all simple things we can all do. And I hope this just served as a very gentle reminder, as well as some new information for you as to maybe why you struggle with chronic neck tightness that you can now start to utilize in your everyday life and change how you're feeling. Now, the biggest thing is you can do it while you're sitting at your desk. You can do it at certain times when things feel easy. But if you like to work out, these same cues should be going into your workout as well, because we do repetition after repetition. So it's really important that we are monitoring our alignment, that we are monitoring our breath, and that we're monitoring what muscles we're using when performing exercises. Okay, so if I tend to, and my cue has always been to pull my shoulders down and back, we now know that that's not actually the best cue for helping us breathe or actually helping putting our shoulders in a good position. So we need to modify that and think about what's happening with my collarbones when I'm starting to do my upper body workout. Where are my shoulders? Where are my collarbones when I'm doing my exercises? Okay, so does anybody have any questions as we're wrapping up here? If not, that's okay. I hope you found this really useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can always reach out to me at Janice@discoverimi.com. I'm super happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you for all of you for being on here. Thank you for our IMS people for sharing this information with their clients who've been on here. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your evening. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Sarah will be on talking more about upper body exercises. So please be sure to join us. Watch your inbox for registration for that webinar here in the next 2 weeks. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye-bye.